My Lords, the United Kingdom has a long history of being open to the world. That includes providing sanctuary to people fleeing conflict, tyranny and oppression. There are countless historical examples of this country extending the hand of friendship to men, women and children in their hour of need. And there are several members of your Lordship's House who are alive today only because of that. But I'm not going to delay the House with a history lesson, not least because this is not only a matter of history, it is also what we are doing right now. Since 2015, we have resettled more than 25,000 people, half of whom were children. And our family reunion scheme has seen a further 39,000 people settle in the UK. Over 88,000 British national overseas status holders and their family members have chosen to apply for the BNO route, with over 76,000 granted so far. Some 15,000 people were airlifted out of Afghanistan to the UK from mid-August under Operation Pitting, over and above the earlier transfers of around 2,000 locally employed staff and their families under the Afghan Relocations and Assistance Policy. And our Afghan Citizens Resettlement Scheme aims to welcome a total of 20,000 people. So against that background, and right at the outset, I want to make two important points. First, providing sanctuary and refuge are not only not inconsistent with a fair asylum and immigration system, such humanitarian measures are only possible if we have a fair asylum and immigration system which is capable of providing both welcome and also integration. And second, an approach to immigration which refuses admission to anyone under any circumstances is obviously inhumane. But the corollary must also be rejected. Being humane does not mean allowing everyone in. And I remind the House that there are some 80 million displaced people around the world today. So let's start with a basic reality. The current system is not working. It's not working for those people who genuinely need protection and refuge. And they should be our priority. Those in genuine need and in places of conflict, not those who are already in safe countries like France or Belgium or the Netherlands. But nor is the current system working for the people of this country. So the status quo is not a viable option.
Anyone who believes that this bill will actually be successful in implementation is delusional. So when this bill fails, the government will presumably blame somebody else rather than themselves. A two-tier asylum system will fail. Withdrawal of citizenship without notification or explanation will be immoral. Breach of international conventions, as has already been described, including Article 31, is totally unacceptable for a democratic nation. Plus the fact that promising resettlement programmes that have actually been curtailed is also a delusion which actually will come home to bite. Because if you promise other than Hong Kong, and for those eventually from Afghanistan, that there will be other resettlement routes when you've withdrawn, as has already been said, the routes in respect of family reunion, and you've not put in place alternatives, you'll end up with what happened last year. Not a single person resettled from their country of origin from the Yemen. Only one person from Iran. Please, if we're going to preach morality, let us at least be honest about it. So in my time, I just want to ask the noble Baroness, the Minister, in winding up, to clarify via her officials in the box whether the Home Secretary, seeing we're talking about morality and the intentions of this bill, whether the Home Secretary did say, reported extensively on the 17th of November from her visit to Washington, speaking to journalists and talking about migrants. These people have come to our country and abuse our British values, abuse the values of the fabric of our country and of our society. And she goes on. And as a result of that, there's a whole industry that thinks it's right to defend those individuals that cause the most appalling crimes against British citizens, devastating their lives and their communities. I want her to come back this evening and tell me what was incorrect in those quotes in those newspapers. Remove the right to come here unless you have a passport and a visa is fraudulent. It creates a two-tier system which says if you get here legally and you have the right to be here, we'll deny you asylum because, of course, you don't warrant it. But if you don't have the documentation and you arrive here illegally, we'll imprison you for 4 years. What sort of government, what sort of nation, what sort of opportunity are we talking about this afternoon?
There's nothing fair about a bill which is neither trauma-informed or victim-centred. The government seem intent on making it harder for victims to be identified without any clear justification. Indeed, I am disappointed that the government have not published a detailed impact assessment on the effects of this bill on victims of modern slavery and how that might differ across the different regions of the United Kingdom. I want to commend Noble Lord McCall for his continued work in this area and for championing the Modern Slavery Victims Support Bill. I wish to echo and indeed reiterate all that he has already said to this House regarding Part 5. My Lords, I am proud of the Human Trafficking and Exploitation, Criminal Justice and Support for Victims Act, which was passed in Northern Ireland in 2015. It was the first comprehensive piece of legislation on this subject to be passed anywhere in the United Kingdom. My Lords, the very title of that legislation serves to further the point I wish to make. Criminal justice and support for victims. Justice and support go hand in hand and complement each other. I welcome Clause 63. It is good to see the government catching up on the Northern Ireland and Scotland, where the NRM support has been provided on a statutory basis since 2015. My Lords, the statutory support available in Northern Ireland is for 45 days, even if a conclusive grounds decision is made in that time. But the recovery period is set out at 30 days in Clause 60, par 3, after which time the government can deport a person who no longer has right to remain. It is disappointing that there is no provision for long-term support in Clause 63 for confirmed victims of modern slavery once they have exited the NRM.
One of this government's favourite slogans that's just been repeated is that our asylum system is broken, followed by a claim that a Johnson government will fix it. Yet 2 years ago, the Home Secretary said her then plan would halve the number of boats crossing the Channel in 3 months and make them infrequent in 6 months. Needless to say, since then they've increased tenfold. In response, the Home Secretary and Government have introduced this bill, which contains no new safe and legal routes, nothing to target ruthless criminal gangs and smugglers, and a number of empty and unworkable solutions. If we want to know why the asylum system is broken, we need look no further than this government and the Home Office. The number of initial asylum decisions being made by the Home Office each year has dropped by more than 40% over the last 5 years. That's why the backlog has increased. Some 67,000 people, some say even more, are still waiting for an initial decision on their asylum claim. Relationships with France in particular have now reached rock bottom, and there appears to be a general lack of trust within the EU generally. International development aid has been cut back, contrary to an election commitment. Reducing levels of support will do nothing to prevent people having to leave their homes to seek asylum.